Hey everybody, so here it is, my first video podcast. I am super excited for so many reasons actually, but one of them, I actually do love gear. I love sound engineering. I love everything about like recording and the studio. I love mixing boards and Pro Tools and stuff like that. So this has been like a really fun journey. I haven't recorded stuff in so long. I'm gonna lower it just a little bit here. So it was just really fun to get back into microphones and the mic stand and the audio interface and deal with GarageBand, which I've never really used. I've always been kind of more a Pro Tools PC guy, but then I got my MacBook and I love it, and so I'm recording the audio through there. So welcome. This is our first episode. We're going to be doing one weekly at the end of each week. I want to do interviews with authors and musicians. We're going to look at book reviews and music product reviews. And what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about topics that really deserve an episode about what I think is important for families and teachers and students to know when it comes to learning music, and a lot of the kind of hiccups that you might come across when you're becoming a musician. And so today we're going to cover that first one. But again, just welcome. If you're on YouTube right now, make sure to subscribe. It helps us out a lot. If you're on any other platform, make sure you give us a review and just support us any way you can. So it's just really exciting to finally get this going. So with that said, welcome to our episode 1. And today we're going to be covering how to get your kids to more effectively, I don't want to say just practice, but just have a better musical experience, better musical learning experience. I can't tell you the amount of families, when their kids start playing, they're all excited. Of course, the family's excited and lessons start, and it's kind of like this trajectory that's like going straight to the moon. And then inevitably, it could be as short as a couple of weeks or a couple of months. There's kind of a plateau, right? But that happens with any activity. When we start an activity, if we're taking martial arts or learning a new language, we kind of start super gung-ho. But then after a while, it just becomes a little bit routine. And so we kind of fall into this place of like, oh, why isn't it as exciting? Maybe I chose the wrong thing. So I'm here to tell you that it's not at all that you chose the wrong thing or the wrong instrument or maybe music as a whole. But there is a correct way, or I should say more effective way, to approach learning music that, in my experience and all the experience of my colleagues and all the families that I've seen, the kids that I've seen throughout the years, that it leads to a much higher success rate of continuing with music. Then, of course, if later on you realize, well, you know what, I did it for quite a bit of time, a year or two, and it's not really my thing, that's different than giving up too soon. And in fact, I believe her name is Angela Duckworth. There's a great book called Grit. And she talks about how important it is to continue an activity once you start and really follow through, and how that actually sets you up for success in life. So if you show those traits in how you approach things in life and you demonstrate that to your kids, it really leads to like a higher percentage of success later in life. So I thought that was really fascinating. The book is wonderful. I'll leave a link in the description below. It's called Grit, again, by Angela Duckworth. Good read. And so with that said, I want to talk about how to talk to your kids about music and how to approach it. And so the first thing you want to have, as with anything, is a plan, right? You don't want to just go into it saying, okay, great, I'm going to practice. We all do that. Like, I'm going to do this for an hour a day, every day, like working out, right? I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to run 20 miles. And then you might do that for a day or two or even a week, and then you're like, I can't keep this up. So the first thing is having a plan, really writing it down. Sit down and ask these really important questions. What do I want out of music? Is it just, these are the questions I would ask parents and even students. What do you want out of this? Is it just recreational? Is it just fun? Do you want to do it as a career? Do you really feel called to be a musician? Do you want to apply for Juilliard, Berklee's College of Music? And is that your ultimate goal? That's a very different approach than someone that just wants to have fun and play a couple of songs they heard on the radio. And by the way, they're both valid. There's no better or worse kind of goal. Everyone is a different place in their life, has different goals, and maybe music is just something that's, I want to look into it. It sounds like fun. I'd give it a try, and maybe it adds like an extra wonderful component to your life. So that's question number one. What do you want out of music? Then once you answer that question, we can determine how intense you're going to go after it. Because if your goal is to, I'll use the Juilliard example, and I'll give you my personal story with the Juilliard. When I was a teenager, I actually started playing piano in my teens in high school. So I was kind of late to the game. And I remember in high school, they offered 2 classes for art. So you could either do a painting class or a piano class. And I had never played piano before. I didn't know anything about music. We had a piano in the house. My sister played. But it just was something I was never drawn to. I was into a million other things except that. And my dad was a painter, so I had tried that. Wasn't very good at it. And so I said, why not? Let me give this piano thing a try. So I did. And it was kind of love at first note. The minute I sat down and just played a key and I saw what music looked like on the paper, and I had my first couple of lessons in high school, and they were kind of beginner, full classroom lessons. They weren't even intense private lessons. I was hooked. That's it. I knew there was no going back. So for me, it was one of those aha moments where it kind of changed my life. So I practiced, and my teachers told me, even though I had started late, if I put in enough time, I could apply for a college program, which I eventually did at Hunter College in the city. And I loved my time at Hunter, and the music program was wonderful. My teachers there just had an amazing time. But I did look into, at the time, Juilliard. I just wanted to see what they required, right? And I remember reading the audition, what you had to prepare. It was, I'm not going to make it up. You could probably look it up online, but it was a huge amount of music. It was super high level, tons of memorized pieces by the toughest composers like Chopin, Liszt, Rachmaninoff, just really difficult things. So I say that just to say, just to prove the point of if that's your goal to get into Juilliard, obviously your practice regimen has to be very different than someone that just wants to play, Ed Sheeran or John Legend. That's very different. So if you're going for Juilliard, that's going to be hours a day of slaving, doing scales, and doing a million other things, which is awesome. But that's a different approach than, again, if you just want to play, the Beatles. Very, very different than if we're playing Mozart or again, Chopin or something like that. So question number one, what do you want to get out of it? Once you get that, we decide what you want to do. When it comes to planning out how many times you practice, how you practice, before we get to the, the amount of times, and there's a specific word that I can't think of right now, frequency, there it is. The frequency of times you're going to practice a week. First, I want to tell you how to get a great practice session. And what that means is just like working out, where if you have a personal trainer, they're going to tell you, well, first we have to, again, you have to have your goals, right? To lose weight, to bulk up, to whatever it is. First, you have to warm up. Then you have to do a certain type of exercise. Then you have to do, let's say, cardio one day. So music, and then resistance the next day. Same thing with the piano. You don't want to approach it where you just sit at a piece and you're just going to practice and just do that over and over and over again. There are parts, let's say that was a Mozart sonata. There are things happening there, just like when we exercise, that we need to break it down into smaller pieces and make sure we do in each practice session a little bit of each part of what makes a great musician. In this case, a great piano player, or if you're teaching your kids xylophone or how to read music, there's all these little building blocks. And so let me show you a little sheet that I designed for that. So this is a little monthly practice schedule that I designed for my students and that you can print out at the bottom of the video for the PDF. And basically, even though it looks like there's a lot of stuff here, the idea is this is a monthly practice sheet. And so you want to cover 3 main things when you practice. So we'll work backwards. I like to work backwards. We have the piece or the song that we're working on. So let's say if it was the Mozart sonata, there's the piece, or if it's something as simple as Twinkle Twinkle, then that would be your main piece. Maybe we could write that in number 3, right? Because we want to get to that. So that's our third part. So let's write, let me do it in blue. So it's song. I'm using my finger here, so I apologize for the sloppiness. So you want to work on the piece, obviously, right? That's the bulk of what you're going to be working on. But in order to get to that, we have to do certain building blocks. So we'll use the Mozart example. And it's a little advanced, but we'll use that as an example. If I'm playing Mozart, my left hand is doing this. So that's called Alberti bass. Something that you won't encounter in Color Me Mozart, but it's something that piece would need. So I would add that to, let me put it here, like in this first section. I just scribbled there, but that would be where the Alberti bass would go. Actually, you know what? I'll write Alberti. That's terrible, but that's okay, because that's the idea. So that's what I would practice first. Then on number 2, in order to be able to read that Mozart piece, I'd have to be able to sight read. And I talk about sight reading a lot. Sight reading is just the ability to look at a note, look at music, and translate it to your instrument, to the xylophone or to the piano. And that's something you want to encourage your kids to do right from the beginning. Think about it. We teach our kids the ABCs and the numbers right from, I would say, pretty much birth, because they're surrounded by all this singing ABCs and 1, 2, 3s and going over, and then forget it when they get into preschool and kindergarten. It's just repeated, immersed in it. Same thing with music. It's a language that needs to be learned how to be read and how to write. And so same thing. So I would do in this second part, let me change the color. So let me see if I can write this. Let me get a little closer. I'm doing red. So sight reading. So those are the 3 sections that would make for a great practice session. Then on the extreme beginning and extreme end of that, especially when you're working with kids, you want to have a singing section, right? Where you kind of start the practice session. You don't want to just kind of go cold like, hey, let's practice scales. You're not going to tell a kid that. That's not fun at all. So you warm up with singing something. And then you end the lesson with, again, almost like an outro, to the lesson, where you're transitioning to another activity, but you kind of do like a sing along to end. And that's where you can ask your kids to tell you their favorite song. I include in the workbook tons of listening to do, like if you're listening to the accordion or the violin. It's just a great time to have a musical conversation with your kids. And I've seen many of you on Instagram tell me that as a family, you experience that together. And that's wonderful. There's nothing cooler than a family that can share music. And it's something that you can kind of grow together in doing. And so be sure to pay attention to those details. They get lost a lot of times. And every time I ask family, whenever a parent asks me, why isn't my kid practicing? And then I'll ask them kind of like, straight out. Have you been doing, A, B, C, and D? Well, no, we're not doing that, because they don't want to do that. But you have to cultivate that atmosphere of wanting to listen to music. Maybe shut the TV off. And instead of like using YouTube, you can use just Amazon Prime, where it's just the audio and you can listen, and then have like a listening kind of party where you can say, well, what instrument is that? What instrument is featured? And look at songs that feature the trumpet or the violin or the xylophone or anything like that. So when it comes to your kids, this sheet is great. Let me erase this. Am I still on the screen? Yes, I am. Okay, so let's delete. Let's delete all this. So in the case of, if you're doing this with your kids, I'll zoom in here. This is where you would put, let's start here. We'll put a name. So let me put mine here. Blue. So we have Adrian. And we're in the month of June. You'd write it better, obviously. And let me go here. So week 1. So today is oh my God, I can't remember. I believe it's the 15th. Forgive me if it's not the 15th. No, what am I talking about? It's the 12th. Okay, it's the 12th. So we have, here we'd write week 1. So that would be 6/12. And let's say next week would be 6/19, right? The week of. And so we happen to be on a Friday. So you would check off that today you did practice. And then here you would fill in it says practice all 3 skills every practice session. And we talked about that. So we'll do it in red. So let's say the first thing you're going to do with your kids, you're going to practice the examples on the page, right? You're going to practice let's say it's the first exercise in book 1. You're going to do the 4 C's. Then you're going to do D, C, D, C. And then finally E, D, C, which leads to Mary Had a Little Lamb. So here you would put maybe exercises. Oops, that's a terrible X right there. Let's try that again. There's the E. Exercise 1, 2, 3, right? So you do those first 3 pages exercise, and you could do the coloring pages as well. Maybe the second thing is the coloring, right? You can color in the coloring exercises. It's terrible. S right there. Okay. Terrible. That's okay. So the coloring, as much as it is fun for the kids, it also reinforces what they're learning, that the fact that red squares are C, orange triangles are D, and yellow circles are E. So that's really, really important. Even though coloring is super fun, it's really, really important. And then finally, what we said before, I'll do it a different color here. This is your piece. So in this case, it would be, you can't see that. Let's do it in black. Mary had a little lamb. So again, I'm writing with my finger. So let's say you guys practiced all those three things, and you started with singing a song and you ended with singing a song, and did it, like I said before, like a nice listening party. Maybe checked out the worksheets, and also here on the bottom of the page, completed practices, so you can see how many you did in a month, right? And so let's say you guys practice on Saturday, you would check here if you practice the Monday, and then Tuesday, and you keep filling that in, and then you can print a new one and put it just somewhere visible. You want to keep it either on the refrigerator or in the music room if you have like a cork board or a whiteboard like we have here. But make sure you keep that visible. Kids love to check stuff off. And then finally, this little extra bonus, which we all know, is kids love stickers. My goodness, kids love stickers. And I used to think, why do kids love stickers so much? And then I remembered I love stickers too. So make sure that you give them like a little sticker as a reward. And I guarantee if you do these steps where there's structure to the lesson and you engage with your kids or your students and make sure that you start together, encourage them, and make a great time out of learning music, you will see progress like you've never seen before. And you'll have just a great time. It's wonderful. I've learned so much new music through my students, so I continue to learn. And just music is this wonderful thing that continues. So I hope you got a lot out of today. Let me know how you're doing with your lessons. Let me know what we can help you out with. The point of these podcasts too is just have a conversation and to have a dialogue. So if you shoot me any questions, I'd be happy to answer them on the podcast and just answer anything that you have. So happy playing. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.